Hello and welcome back to the Smile and Save podcast, brought to you by Seven Protect Credit Union. My name's Tom, and today we've got a very special episode as we're joined by Cath from Stop Loan Sharks. Cath, welcome to the podcast. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having us.
Perfect, no problem. So today we're going to talk all about loan sharks, what they are, maybe some misconceptions, how you can spot a loan shark and get support. Just talk about the danger that they present to society. So to begin with, I guess, very simple question. What is a loan shark?
I like simple questions. So legally speaking, a loan shark is someone who lends you money without authorisation. So if you want to lend money as a business, then you have to go to the Financial Conduct Authority and get permission to do so. They will check you're a fit and proper person, so you haven't got any bankruptcy issues or convictions for fraud or anything like that. You have to fill in all this paperwork, and then they give you authorisation to lend. Loan sharks don't have that authorisation to lend, and that's actually a criminal offence that they commit, which is what we prosecute them for when we find them.
Okay, perfect. So, I guess any regulated lender you can find, there's ways of doing that. So
yeah, absolutely. The FCA have got a register. It's a public register. You can search by individual or by company name or by number if they give you the number, and that's publicly available online. But if people have concerns and they're not sure, we're quite happy if people give us a ring that we can check it for them.
Perfect, good. And we'll get onto the support that you guys deliver very shortly. So I guess next question, why are loan sharks so harmful, and what are the ways that they can impact people's lives?
So I think the problem with loan sharks is there's two main issues I always say. The first one is financial. So they won't do any checks to make sure you can afford their loan. You'll know at Serve and Protect you have to do lengthy checks to make sure this individual can pay you back, and that's not going to put them in financial jeopardy in any way, shape or form. Loan sharks don't care. They will lend anybody anything because they will then make sure that they are the priority repayment above and beyond your rent, your mortgage, your food even, or anything else. So there's a big financial problem. The other issue is what they charge people. So we've seen APRs, interest rates in excess of 130,000% being charged on loans. And just to give you a sort of real example, I'm working with a lady called Kelly, and she borrowed loads of small amounts of money, £50, £100, £200 from a friend of her sister's. And it's sort of spiraled, and this woman's asking her for more and more money. When we sat down with Kelly, we worked out she's borrowed just shy of £3,000 in these small loans. She's paid back £25,000, and the woman's saying she still owes £16,000. But what that actually means for Kelly is every month she earns £1,088. That's her money that comes home every month. She's got kids. And the loan shark's taking £900 of that. So that's £188 she's got left. So she's not paying her rent. She's just about feeding her children. She's not doing much else. And that's the impact it can have on people's finances. Because of that, therefore, she's defaulting on her rent. So she's in trouble with the housing. She's not paying a council tax. So that's going to come back at some point. She's behind on all her bills, and she's really, really struggling. But above and beyond what they do to you financially is what they do to you mentally. So loan sharks will threaten people to get their money back. And sometimes those threats are really nasty. I'll break your legs, those sorts of things. But more often, it's more kind of coercive control. So it's 150 text messages a day. It's hammering on your front door at 5 a.m. So you've got to explain to the kids and your partner why someone's doing that. One case recently, the lady borrowed £50 for school shoes for a kid. She paid back £250, challenged the loan shark, and said, that's it, I'm done. I've paid you about 5 times what I borrowed. The loan shark put on Facebook that she owed him money for drugs. So her mum saw that, and her Auntie Beryl saw that, and her next door neighbour saw that, and it absolutely humiliated her. It completely floored her, possibly more than even like a physical threat would have done, because that wasn't what she borrowed for. She borrowed for school shoes. But, there's no smoke without fire, is there? Oh, did you read about so-and-so on Facebook? And she knew those conversations were happening. She said she went into the school and she could feel everyone looking at her and things like that. And it had such an impact on her mental health that it really did have a really detrimental impact on her life.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, it's not just the financial. I guess that's what a lot of people assume. It's, the APRs that are charged. But yeah, it must be really difficult to try and see a light at the end of the tunnel, I think, when all those financial challenges are going on.
Definitely. I think one of the scary stats we have is it takes people an average of 3.5 years to report a loan shark. So that's 3.5 years of, Facebook shaming, hammering on the door, text messages, threatening to tell your boss to watch you because you might have your hand in the till because you owe them money or whatever else it is they're doing. It's an awful long time. And a lot of people don't tell anyone about this loan. Yep. They don't tell the partner or their mum or the best mate or anybody else because of a sense of, I don't know, shame or embarrassment maybe, or just a feeling that they got themselves into it, which isn't true. This is loan sharks, this is criminality we're talking about. But I think that makes people feel very, very isolated sometimes.
Yeah, I can imagine so. Yeah, you can see how that would happen. So I guess a few ways that people can become a little bit more aware. First of all, are there any signs or things to look for or ways that people can spot a loan shark?
Yeah, it's hard sometimes. They don't walk around with a placard on, unfortunately.
Yep.
So one of the things that we say is a loan without paperwork. So if you've got a loan from a legitimate company, they will give you paperwork, and it will determine all sorts of things. It will tell you the interest rate, what happens if you pay back early, what happens if you miss payments, total cost of credit, and so on. Loan sharks don't bother with that. It's all cash in hand. It's all a friendly chat down the pub and here's some money. So a loan without paperwork would be one a big red flag for us. A loan where you don't know what you're paying back. So even if you do borrow from a friend and they say, oh, I'll lend you the £200, just buy me a pint. That in effect is interest on that loan.
Yep.
But you know what you're paying back. You're giving them back £200 and you're buying them a pint. With a legitimate company, it will tell you the total cost of credit, what you're going to pay back for that loan. Loan sharks make it up as they go along. They won't be able to tell you what you'll pay back because that loan's really just a hook. And then they're just going to keep coming back for more and more money. So I think that, and then any sign of threats, coercion, anything that doesn't feel right, wanting personal details. I've had one recently where the lender took someone's medical license number and threatened to tell their employer that they were in debt and that would mean they'd lose their job, all of which wasn't true. But that a legitimate loan company doesn't need your medical license number. They don't need to keep your passport in their possession, which some loan sharks will do with security. The loan legitimate company does that. So anything that doesn't seem right. But again, if you're in doubt, give us a ring. We will check out whether they're legitimate or not and then give you some advice.
Yeah, no, I guess, anything that sounds wrong or feels wrong is probably wrong.
Just your gut.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, it's good advice. So if listeners think that any of that sounds familiar and that they might have encountered a loan shark, what should they do in that circumstance?
So the best thing you can do is give us a ring. So we are an enforcement team. We're here to take out the loan sharks, but as well as that, we support people who've been affected by this crime. So that can be anonymous information you can give us. You can give us confidential information, or you could just have a chat about what would happen next. What would happen if you did talk to us? We'll happily deal with all those scenarios. And I think it is just about having that first conversation with somebody. So we've got a hotline, which is 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And that's 0300 555 2222. And we've got live chat on our website, which is stoploansharks.co.uk. So sometimes people like to type rather than talk. That's fine by us. But like I say, you can tell us you're called Mickey Mouse and we will call you Mickey Mouse for the duration of the call. That's not a problem. It's absolutely fine. It's just having that first conversation. And then you can go away and make whatever decision you want. We don't put pressure on people.
Okay, perfect. Yeah. So, I guess that it's a great way to reduce that worry that people might have of standing up and speaking out.
I think when you're with a loan shark, the loan shark has the power, and the way that we can stop the loan shark having the power is for you to have information and knowledge, and that's what we're about. If you know what your options are, you can then make a choice, can't you? But it's a choice that's based in reality rather than what the loan shark's telling you.
Yeah.
Because loan sharks will tell you, pay me this much, and then I won't come back again, but they will. Loan sharks will tell you, well, it's not me that lent you the money, it's a Mr. Big, it's a shady character, you don't want to cross him. And there isn't a big shady character. There isn't an Albanian mafia behind the loan or anything else. It's them, but they just want you to be scared. So again, it's about dispelling some of those myths and letting us have a conversation about truth and honesty.
Yeah, and taking that power back into your own hands.
Yeah, definitely.
So if someone out there thinks that they've been a victim of a loan shark and that this is ringing a few bells, how can they get support themselves?
So the best thing to do is to call us, but I would say have that conversation with anybody. Talk to the credit union, talk to a debt advisor, talk to your neighbour, talk to somebody, but take away that sense of isolation that the loan shark's relying on, really. But the best thing to do is to get in touch with us. Like I say, hotline, live chat, whatever. We'll come and meet you. We'll come and meet you in a cafe. And again, you don't have to tell us your name. We'll have just have a chat over a cup of tea and get that information.
Perfect. Yes, there's more of a friendly way to it. If
definitely.
So if a listener is concerned about someone else, so not themselves, if this sounds similar and they think they know someone who's in this situation, what should they do for them?
You can also ring us because we will give you some advice. I always think that one of the best things I do when I meet someone who's not quite sure about what to do is I will play them one of the videos on our YouTube channel. So on our YouTube channel, we've got about 10, I think now, victim stories, different people, different ages, different places across the country. And they tell you their story. It's all very well me saying, we win most of our cases at court and we've never had someone who's been cross that they've talked to us, which is all true. But I think it's better to hear it from the horse's mouth. So if you have a look at those videos, and I've had people where they've sat down and they've sort of watched that with their child, their neighbour, their friend, their work colleague, and said, I think this might be you. And found one that kind of relates to their situation. And it tells the kind of victim's story and how bad it got, but it shows that they can come out the other side. It shows there is a light at the end of the tunnel, as you said, because these people are all people who engaged with us and the loan shark was arrested and dealt with, and then they are now in a much better place. And I think that's a really powerful tool as a way of sort of saying to someone, yes, right now it feels all-encompassing. It feels like it's, you can't get out. But actually, if you listen to Michelle's story or Matthew's story, you might find that there is actually a way that you can get through this.
Yeah, perfect. And anything that you've talked about in terms of links or phone calls, phone numbers, sorry, we'll make sure that's in the description as well, so people can access that.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. So moving on, are there any misconceptions or things that people might not know about loan sharks or be surprised to hear?
That's a good question. I think people kind of have an archetypal image of Phil Mitchell as a loan shark, a kind of cockney geezer with a load of lads with baseball bats behind him. So it surprises people sometimes. Last year, 1 in 5 of the people we arrested were female. You get lady loan sharks as well. The Welsh team, who operate in Wales, do a very similar job to us. They had an 86-year-old female loan shark who they arrested and prosecuted. She didn't look 86, to be fair, but that's because she was living the high life on other people's money. But she was. And we've arrested people in their 70s and so on. So it's not always the kind of thug. With no offence to Phil Mitchell at all. It can literally be anyone. We prosecuted a business student at university who was advertising to students on Snapchat. We've prosecuted people who used to work for legitimate companies and then have gone off on their own and not bothered to get that authorisation, so haven't acted legally in the future. We've prosecuted people involved in organised crime, but the vast majority, I would say, are more kind of everyday people who maybe started off lending to a couple of mates and then thought, hang on a minute, I can make some money out of this. And it's grown and it's grown and it's grown. So I think, it can be anybody. And half the people we supported last year thought the loan shark was their friend when they took the loan out. So they hadn't decided to go to a loan shark. They thought they were borrowing from a work colleague or someone they knew at the school gates or, Brian they went to school with who they see around town sometimes. And it was only further down the line they realised this isn't my mate, this is someone who's a bit nefarious and something's gone wrong here. So I think there's an element of buyer beware there as well, that, it's not always the shady character and you know what you're doing when you take out a loan from a loan shark. It could be that you believed you were taking out a loan from a friend.
Yeah. I guess it goes back to if it doesn't feel right, trust your gut. No matter who the person
friends
is.
do lend friends money. This is one of the things. It's a hard message to get across because, but it's one of those things, isn't it? If you lent someone money and they were your bridesmaid at your wedding and you went to school with them and you see their kids once a week and you know them inside out and you've borrowed £200 and you're going to pay back £200. Nothing wrong with that whatsoever. If it's someone at the school gates who you're not quite sure what their surname is or what their husband does for a living or whereabouts they live, why would they lend you money? Because they're taking a risk doing that. You could disappear. You could put the kid in breakfast club and never see them again. You could avoid them or whatever else. It's you just got to think a bit buyer beware, I think, in terms of, is this person really my friend? How well do I know them to actually get into a financial agreement with them? Because that's what this is at the end of the day.
Yeah, no, it's a really good thing for people to think about. So are there any characteristics which make some individuals or groups more vulnerable to loan sharks than others?
That's a good question. I think anyone can be a victim. We've worked with people who earned tens and tens of thousands of pounds every year, but were maybe a bit asset rich and cash poor. And if something changed in their circumstances, then the big house and the lifestyle that they had became unsustainable. I think there are different vulnerabilities. I think what we see with loan shark victims is quite often something's changed for them. So that might be a relationship breakdown. It might be having a child. It might be losing a job. Something has shifted in their world, which means that suddenly something that felt okay now doesn't, and maybe previous access to credit has dried up because of this change in circumstances. And sometimes it's lots of things that have happened. It's a partner with an addiction, and an extra child that wasn't expected, and then a job that's cut hours, and it just sort of feels like a spiral down. So I think, there's lots of things that can make people vulnerable at different points in their lives. But actually, anyone can be affected.
Yeah, a lot of that rings true for the work that we do at Serve and Protect in terms of improving financial resilience, but also safeguarding against financial vulnerability, and how a change of circumstances really can, flip people's finances and their lives on their head, and those
Yeah.
options dry up. So, yeah, no, it's
You
you
kind
can
of live to
see
your
how that
means,
could
don't
happen.
you? Whatever those means are, you live to your means, and then
Yep.
all of a sudden, if those means are reduced, you suddenly find the mortgage doesn't get cheaper, the rent doesn't get any cheaper, that the car loan isn't going to go away or whatever else, and all of a sudden something that felt affordable maybe doesn't anymore. I think that can
Yep.
be the problem.
Yeah, definitely. So I guess moving to the real world, do you have any examples of public sector employees? Of course, at Serve and Protect, we serve those working in the police, prison and probation, the armed forces, fire and NHS services. Do you have anyone in the public sector that has been a victim of loan sharks, and any stories there?
We have, unfortunately. So I would say out of those sectors, the main one probably is NHS. We've had numerous cases over the years of nurses in particular, but also porters being victims of loan sharks within the hospital as well, within their community. So we've seen it particularly with migrant nurses, where they've sort of come over to England to work, and there's been a matriarchal figure who helps them settle into England, but also that is the person that you go to for a loan. We had a case in Middlesex Hospital where we actually had a doctor who was lending to nurses, which obviously is problematic because there's a massive power imbalance then between the two. So it definitely does go on in the sectors. Armed forces is a difficult one. We have had a couple of cases, but the individuals borrowed from outside of the armed forces, so they've borrowed from the local community, but been a victim of a loan shark kind of outside of the armed forces itself, but they were still military personnel. And it happens everywhere. That's what I would say. It's really sad. Last year we had someone who worked for a major legal firm who was a victim of a loan shark. It can literally happen to anyone. Wow. So there will be, unfortunately, loan shark victims amongst your members.
Yeah, it's a really difficult one, and I guess there's the stereotypical thought of loan shark as kind of what we've dispelled. But yeah, the peer-to-peer lending is really difficult, I think, when there's someone that you think you can trust, and all of a sudden that's flipped on its head. So
it's where that line is, isn't it? I mean, the actual offence, you've got to be lending as a business. So for us, that means you've got to be charging interest or getting something out of it, which is normally interest.
Yep.
And you've got to be lending to more than one person. But quite often the individual doesn't know that person's lending to more than one person. So I'd say don't worry too much about that bit. Let us look at that. But it's really hard to tell, and it's where that line is between peer-to-peer lending, friend lending, in effect, and then illegal lending. But again, that's not a decision you have to make as an individual. We can look at that and we can give you our opinion as to whether this has crossed the line to illegal lending or not. The other thing to say as well is that the person who's borrowed has done nothing wrong. The criminal here, the person that's done something wrong is the lender. The person who's borrowed is a victim of crime, the same way they would be if they were burgled. It's no different at all. They've done absolutely nothing wrong themselves, and I think it's important to say that.
Yeah, of course, definitely. I mean, we've touched on this already a little bit, but could borrowing money from a colleague or friend be considered loan sharking? It is a grey area, but is there any sort of line that can be crossed?
I think it is about that interest rate. It's about them lending to more than one person, like I say. But I think more than that, it's about, is this a friend? So like I say, legitimately a friend, even if, a friend might say, you know what, I've got a bit of spare money, rather than getting a car loan, I'll lend it you pay me back and pay me the interest you would have paid on the car loan. And fundamentally, if they're doing that to one individual, that's fine, because there's no illegal lending there. There's no business there. They're making a little bit, but they're making as much as they would have done if they put it in a NISA or something like that. If, however, they are lending to 20 people in that way, and the first time you can't pay, they double what you owe, that's illegal lending. And I think, unfortunately, it's often further down the line, it's further into the loan that someone realises that this is not a friend, because a friend would not do that. A friend would understand that actually this month, you've got to fly your brother home from Australia because he's poorly and he needs to get home. So you've given the money to there. And they'd be like, of course you don't pay me this month, pay me next month. The loan shark won't. The loan shark would be like, well, you did owe me $4,000, now you owe me 8 because I've doubled what you owe. And I think it's that thing that what I'd like people to do ideally in the world is call us at the first red flag. And I think people call us at the 10th red flag. And I think it is just getting some advice early in that situation. And like I say, before you take the loan out, it's buyer beware. If this is your best mate and you've known them for years and, you'd be godmother to their children, you're probably okay borrowing £500 off them because you're going to pay £500 back and get them a bunch of flowers to say thank you. If you haven't known this person that long and you work with them, but you don't really know them, you don't socialise with them, you don't spend time with them, then I'd run a mile, to be brutally honest. Go to Serve and Protect instead. It's a far better place.
Fantastic. No, absolutely. So I guess coming back to Stop Loan Sharks then, for anyone that's not aware, what are Stop Loan Sharks doing particularly to help combat this issue of loan sharks in the UK?
So we're very much a team of two halves. We have investigators. They will go out and arrest the bad guys, and look at taking witness statements, look at banking evidence, look at any other evidence we uncover, putting together prosecution files, taking that through the courts and everything else. The other side of what we do, though, is much more supportive. It's about individual people. So anyone we have contact with, we will look at their situation, because they're paying the loan shark. Are they okay? Is their mental health okay? Is there a physical health problem that's at the root of the borrowing? What's their housing situation like? Is their family circumstances okay? And we don't pry, we don't do anything else, we don't judge, but it's about looking at what we can do to help you. Would counselling benefit you? If not, that's fine, but if it would, let's look at if we can set that up. Would debt advice benefit you? Are you in trouble with other people because you've been paying the loan shark as a priority debt? And we'll look at trying to help that individual. Whether or not they give us a statement, go on the record, help the investigation, doesn't matter. We will try and help that individual. And then the other side of what we do is about preventing people going to loan sharks in the first place. So if you can save with a credit union and build up a little bit of resilience, fabulous, because everyone has it where the washing machine breaks down a week before payday. My kids go through school shoes like nobody's business. I'm sure other people's do as well. It's the thing of the tire on the car that you weren't expecting, and you've gone over a pothole and it's knocked your traction out. Things happen, life happens, and I think a little bit of financial resilience can ease that pressure. So we do a lot of work promoting savings, particularly credit unions, and also affordable loans. Go to a regulated provider where you know where you stand, and where if you miss a payment, they might say, okay, let's get back on track next month. They're not going to say, right, I'm doubling what you owe me. And they're not going to sort of start threatening you or sending you 150 text messages or anything else. So it's about promoting those alternatives, getting people into credit unions, getting people into debt advice as well, and not trying to borrow their way out of debt, but actually looking at dealing with whatever debt they are in and saying to people, that mate at the school gates, that person you've only worked with for 6 months, don't get a loan from them. It's not worth it.
Yeah, so I guess it's dealing with the problem when it happens, but also trying to stop it from happening in the first place where possible.
Yeah, definitely. A bit like the fire service, I always say, our investigators are the firemen putting out the fire, doing the arresting and everything else. And then we're called liaise, the other side of the team. And we're there trying to put smoke detectors in and say, have you got an escape plan, to make sure people don't need to call the fire service out in the first place. That's the ideal.
Yeah, it's a good way of looking at it. I'm sure a lot of our members, that will ring true. So can Stop Loan Sharks do anything to support employers specifically in helping combat loan sharks for their employees?
We've done work with employers in the past. So one of the things we will do, if we have a cohort at risk of using loan sharks, we can help look at incentivising people to save with the credit union. That's something we will do with employers. We have run webinars in the past for things like HR personnel, because we do see illegal lending in the workplace. About 20% of illegal lending happens in the workplace. And it might be that a dispute between two people that's blown up and people don't know what's going on or why. The manager isn't aware of anything, any sort of thing that's going on that's detrimental. And it might be because of a loan. It might be because of illegal lending. We had there's a local authority in the south of England, and they had a really high sick rate on payday. And they assumed it was all the employees out on the lash having a good time. And actually, it was people avoiding the loan shark on payday. Wow. That's why people phoned in sick on payday, as it turned out. So, yeah, we can help employers. We will happily put on webinars, seminars. We've gone in to talk to employers, but we'll do things online as well. We can do half an hour just on things to look out for and support that's available. And the same for employees. I think it is, it's just about accessing us when you need us. There's loads of information on our website about all the different things we do. And, if you want to contact us at any time, we're there.
Brilliant. No, thank you for that. And I guess just to wrap up, for any listeners who are interested in this and want to get involved, is there a way that they can learn more? And is there anything that they can do to help combat loan sharks themselves?
Yeah, definitely. I think, one of the things we've done with some of the fire services in the Northeast is we've sort of trained their staff. And then when they go out and do visits to vulnerable properties, they've left one of our postcards, one of our leaflets at the flat or the house as a way of doing that. We are here to work in partnership with organisations. So professionally, if anyone who's listening thinks, actually, my neighbourhood policing team could do with some training on this, or, we want the army welfare officers to be trained on this. Our training is free. We don't charge for it. We are funded by government. We will do it online or face-to-face, like I say. So there's loads that people can do. to get involved. And sometimes it's just about having those conversations. It's about breaking the taboo, because loan sharks have power and we don't talk about it. But anyone who wants to access help or support, leaflets, training, or that individual support, the website's a good place to start, which is stoploansharks.co.uk.
Perfect. I'll speak to you afterwards. We'll get all of the useful links that we need, get them in the description for people to access. Cath, that brings us to the end of the episode. Thank you so much. I think that's going to be really useful for a lot of different people. Is there anything you'd like to say before we wrap it up?
No, just thank you very much for having us. And stay safe, everyone.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much to everyone listening at home. We hope you enjoyed this episode, found it useful. Hopefully there's a few misconceptions or things that you may not have thought about before. Hopefully none of this has rang true. But if it does, at least you know where to turn now. Thank you very much for listening. If you haven't already, please do subscribe or follow the podcast to keep up to date with our latest episodes. And otherwise, have a great day and we'll see you next time.